Morning, everyone. Welcome to our meeting. It's 9:30 a.m. and I will confirm that all members of council are here as well as our municipal clerk. About that. Territorial land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the township of Allen-Calderwood is located on the Mississaugan and Neshonomek territory and is the traditional territory of the Mississaugan and Neshonomek. The township of Allen-Calderwood respectfully acknowledges that the Mississaugan Nation are the collective stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. Mover to approve the agenda, that the agenda for the regular council meeting held on March 11, 2025 be approved. Can I get a mover second? Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover, second by Councillor Booth. All in favor? That's carried. Next, we have disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof. Anybody got anything to declare? Seeing none, that'll be noted. Delegations. Our first delegation is regarding the Hullman Memorial Arena Needs Assessment Project Update, and presented by Jonathan Hack from Sierra Planning and Consulting. And Mr. Hack is on the screen this morning. So if you are available, we're just going to pull you up. There's John. How are you, John?
I'm well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, everyone. I do have a short series of slides just to ease the discussion. If I can share the screen, and hope everyone is in a place where they can see a screen. Maybe you could just confirm that for me.
Yes, all members of council can see the screen.
Would the host mind, Emily, maybe just turning on the ability to share? Doesn't look like I have permission. Great, thank you. So hopefully everyone can see that. Maybe I could just get someone to say yes, and then I'll
Yes, go ahead.
Great, thank you. So just today, as I said, it's nice to be able to just come back sort of mid-project and give council a quick update. So to that extent, I put forward a couple of slides just to where we are, and I think maybe just for everyone's benefit, although I have in the research that we've done and the engagement had the pleasure of meeting most members of council, I'm not sure I've met everybody. So hopefully this will give everyone, even if you're more aware of the project than others, an indication of what we are trying to do. So, it was initiated by terms of reference that were very clear to us in terms of what it was trying to do, because we were the authors of the Recreation Master Plan that was undertaken in 2018, which looked quite closely, not as closely as we're doing now, but quite closely at the condition of the arena and what its future was. So all that to say that we're looking at a number of questions that we're trying to answer. And so let me just spend a moment on this slide. I think it's important. We're really asking the question, what level of capital investment in the arena is appropriate right now versus any commitment that there is coming out of this to a longer term vision for the entire site. So that's part of our job is to look at that longer term vision. And within that, there's a couple of sub questions. One of which is just to put it on the table. Do you need this arena? Do you need to do anything? Can you let it just sort of die a natural death through age? The short answer is no. It was the same in 2018. It's the same now. You need the ice surface in that building. And so the really that then puts the whole context to the project, which is there's a need to fix the certain aspects of that physical plant, the slabs, the pipes, the boards, and can be done through a discrete capital project that's relatively low cost uh, compared to the bigger issues that befall many of the older arenas, particularly the memorial ones. So that's one really important question because then it triggers everything else in terms of what the level of commitment is now versus later. And we're all about trying to give council clarity of advice. What can you do tomorrow versus what do you need to put off down the road, but still maintain a long-term plan? Second thing is what's the resident needs as of 2025 across the municipality. So we had a big survey. I'll explain that otherwise. We want to make sure that we're not putting the blinkers on and just assuming anything that in terms of resident needs. But it's not a master plan. That's a much bigger exercise. What's the vision for the entire community complex as a whole? So again, it's not just the arena, it's this whole site, which I don't have to tell you, it's a real gem in terms of what you have there and what you could potentially do if you had all the resources available to council to be able to do it. And then really the last two are really important, which is, what choices can we present to council that represent a balanced investment? What can council, individual members of council agree to, I think, moving forward and maintain a longer term vision? And then really, what does a funding ready strategy look like? And I'll explain that toward the end. So the site, not that anyone needs to know, but I just wanted to, this just reinforces that the project and the discussion that we'll be coming back to you with in relation to a report is essentially going to be recognizing the value of all of these uses. We do not have great information on the ball diamonds in terms of their usage, but we know they're important. And we've met with members of the recreation advisory committees. We have good information from our previous work. So we're not looking to come back to council with an unrealistic plan. And as big as the site is, it's also got some challenges because there are things which constrain it in terms of its full use. So we're going to come back with a bit of a site plan. We're going to make sure we protect and enhance the things that need to be enhanced. And I'm also, in that regard, looking at the cenotaph. That's a really important entryway, and obviously a commemorative piece in its own right. What are the needs of that location? So we have yet to speak to the Legion, and I think over the next period of time that we have, it would be useful for us to do so. The timeline is fairly expedited. We're doing our best to get back to council with a report by April the 8th, and we've obviously undertaken quite a lot of consultation to date. And then we're now into sort of, rolling our sleeves up and looking internally at what we have to do to get the various options out there. Consultation has been very successful. The online public survey was 284 responses, and that's a good response. It's enough to give you a representative figure. We also met with the Recreation Advisory Committee on the 25th of February, so a week or so ago. That was a very good meeting. And we also had the meeting that many members of council were there at in Centerton, where you are now. We had about 30 participants as well, so it was very useful. In terms of the desired changes, we're doing the analysis of the survey now, and what we need to do is come back to you with some defined results. What I've put on here on these slides is just some indications of what we had at the February 18th meeting. So again, looking at the outside uses, we had a number of desired changes. that people identified in terms of additional outdoor amenities. And so that just gives you an indication. You know, some of them wanted more seating, others wanted play equipment, things to deal with the heat of the summers, water bottle filling stations, and courts, and so on and so forth. So it was very useful. Quite expensive if you put all this in place and you don't have enough land to do it. But the essence of this is that how can we improve the overall site as a whole, as discrete projects that you can pick off one by one or make a selection of through further discussion with the community in the years ahead. Then on the arena, again, it's not so much about the ice. I mean, everybody ideally would like a bigger ice surface, and obviously they want the boards and everything to function better. They might want the ice to be in a little um, better condition, but um, overall, what people were looking at was the additional non-ice related uses. In other words, making this a multi-use community center. And I think, you know, there's a lot of merit to it. We knew that back when we did the rec master plan, and here again. So this just gives an indication of people's interest in having spaces. It doesn't have to be, as you see on the screen, really expensive spaces, but it has to be something. The upstairs community room at the rink is a product of the 1950s, and it's not to be pejorative about it. It's just there wasn't the consideration of anything more than a dry, warm space. You need more. You need something which is going to be multi-programmable. And the community centers, as you have them, they work, but they're also aged as well. What we're currently doing with our architects, just to give you an indication here, is we're looking at how we can make those improvements. So you can see there, these are just some scribblings that we've been developing to date, and we're going to put them into some concept plans. We know we can't do everything at once. This is about renovation, phase one, phase two, phase three. We'll work that out. But we're looking at the front of the building as opposed to doing, you know, things like widening or lengthening the ice. Those sorts of things are not going to be value for money. You may as well build a new facility at that point. And that is an option that we have to have long term, which is, and we heard this from the Rec Advisory Committee, is, you know, do not take your eye off the idea that maybe a new building is warranted. We just have to muster a way to get there. And so that generates some important considerations. But what we're looking here is to create a better range of uses for the building overall, without, you know, forgetting that some renovations to seating, accessibility, you know, insulation, these sorts of things. Obviously, the plant, the physical, the pipes and the pad. That's all stuff that needs to be done as well. So here's the point I just wanted to make: is if a new build multi-use rec center is a medium to long-term option. So it's not something we're going to come back with and say you need to build this. There is no money available for that. And if that project is in the sort of $30 million range, for example, but the commitment overall is that long term, the Memorial Arena needs to be reconstituted as a new arena on site. That makes a big difference to what you do short term. Because as you can see on screen, just to give you some, you know, illustrative images there, you've got, you know, some extensions to the building that, you know, those alone would be relatively significant projects that require grant funding. If the commitment's to a long-term replacement of the building, then arguably you wouldn't do this. What you would do is make sure that you keep the building functioning until such time as you can put the funding plan in place to build a new arena. So it affects everything. And so what our report will do, we'll start to put some logic to that. So we'll answer the questions that we posed at the outset, including, you know, creating a document that you could place before funding agencies that probably has a shopping list of things that you could do. We don't recommend that you give a shopping list to funders. I think you pick from what we've done and you build applications for funding as they come to light based on that. But we want to give you the bookends, so to speak. So we'll provide costing and recommendations, And by so doing, we'll give you an indication of what the implementation plan could be over a number of years, what it actually means. What do you need to do? What do you need to empower Jeremy to be able to do over the next few years? What are the capital budgets that are implied? Not forgetting that there are certain things you can do around the site as well. It's not just about the arena. So all in all, what we want to do is answer the question of how much money should you try and spend or grant raise in the next, immediate term, and making sure that whatever you do to fix the building and improve the site, it's not throwaway capital, meaning you don't then throw it away because you decided to go all in on a new arena in 5 years' time. If you're expanding that arena, then that's the project. If you're maintaining the arena, then that's the project, and then there has to be a long-term vision for the site as a whole. So a lot to cram into a short delegation. I'll hand it back to you, Mr. Mayor, but that's where we are, and we'll be back to you shortly.
Thank you, John. We're kind of pretty well aware of what's going on, but it is nice to get an update, even if it was only since the past 2 weeks. So I appreciate that.
Yep.
I'm going to open it up to council. Does any council members have any questions of John? Go ahead, Mary Catherine.
So right at the beginning, John, you said that there's a need for ice in Grafton. So what's the data that's confirming that in the usage? And then if we do replace ice, either thing, the bigger cost obviously is the operational costs around that. So will there be a business plan that shows that the usage will justify the operational costs there?
Well, you'd be in uncharted, through you, Mr. Mayor, you'd be in uncharted council territory if you were asking hockey, or I should say, an ice arena of 70 years to justify its existence. What we try and do is recognize that you are in the business of providing ice to your community. That's a fact and has been a fact for decades. So, and the operating cost is a deficit. It's a deficit in every municipality in the province. And so there is a question of what is your current deficit, and we're currently looking at that. Then the information we had from the Rec Master Plan, it was in around $150,000 back in 2018. We'll see what it is now, and we'll verify the accuracy of all of that information. Going forward, we will be able to provide a generalized estimate of changes to that deficit if you were to do X or Y in terms of some of these changes that we might be contemplating. But that is the situation. So I don't think you would be asking hockey or I should say to ice users to justify the existence of that deficit, because that's been the case across the recreation portfolio. You'd have to do that for every single space that you have, every park, every sidewalk, in effect. So that's not the approach we take. What we do ask is hockey declining or growing? And we measure that through, obviously, provincial records. You measure it through the survey. Now, the survey here is not us asking everyone at a master plan level about recreation activities, but we do get somewhere along the line on that. And then we look at utilization. So we have a request out for latest utilization data. You focus on prime time, which is the period from sort of 4 to 11 p.m., depending on where you are in the city here. It would be, 4 to midnight. And then you have the weekends. And based on that, the last year it was around 83%, something like that, which is pretty high. And so there's a lot of good utilization. And then previous data we're re-looking at that. It was a little less. It wasn't quite 80%. So all in all, I'm certainly satisfied that the maintenance of the service of subsidized ice is something that the municipality needs.
Thank you, John. Any other questions from council? I have a follow-up from Councillor O'Neill.
It's actually a completely different question, but on the weekend, I saw that Northumberland Soccer is currently looking for people to get involved for a new indoor-outdoor field So currently they are using a repurposed arena in Baltimore, but that is over capacity already. So I'm wondering in terms of return on investment, and certainly when we look at Hastings, they did, which is just north of here, they did
Yeah.
take out their ice and they put in a turf, and that turf is exceedingly well used. So, I mean, I think.
Yeah, in fact, yeah. So I'm not sure if there's a question there, but I can certainly offer some commentary on that because we did meet with the soccer group.
You did, or you will?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor. So a couple of things. Hastings, yes, they have a dome there, I think, in Hastings as well. I'm not sure they took ice out or not. They may have, but they also built a new arena. And so again, the equation works out. We're not talking about removing ice in favor of turf. Baltimore, now I haven't looked at it in detail, but that used to be an arena. Obviously, in the 2018 master plan, we had it down as an ice arena. So it must have closed for ice in the last 5 or 6 years. I'm not sure if that's accurate or not, but we'll verify that. So that's being used for indoor soccer. But as you indicated, it's not ideal. So reusing the existing Haldeman Memorial Arena for indoor turf is not viable either. That's not a long-term solution. As I said, the requirement is to maintain the ice. We do, however, and we do a lot of this work around the country, on looking at whether you have fixed wall field houses, meaning a structure, or whether you do an air-supported dome. They're very, very useful and they vary in cost. And so we know that the study is being done. And what we advised Northumberland Soccer to do is they're looking for sites to review, not necessarily buildings to repurpose, but sites to review. So they're looking in Port Hope, Coburg, and other places. One of the things that they are looking at is, are there any other land holdings? So we've met with them, and there may be some land holdings, including this one, that you could site a artificial field turf on, and then dome it either permanently or dome it in the winter, for example. That seems to us to be one option that they could consider. But what it would require is, we can do some site testing on that, and we intend to just to show how you could make it work. I think it would be tight, to be honest. But they would then need to come to you, to council, to then have further discussions, because it would be a project that would obviously be at their risk, not yours. But they do have their eyes on a number of sites, and I think it would be useful to continue that dialogue with them.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, John. Seeing no further questions, the recommendation is that we receive the report, a verbal report from Sierra Planning and Consulting for information. I get moved and seconder. Moved by Councilor Ainsworth, seconded by Deputy Mayor Stolberg. Further discussion? All in favor? That's carried. John, thank you very much for your time coming in and your questions. We really look forward to April 8th, I believe is what you said. So we look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time. Thanks.
Okay, we're going to move right along, and the next delegation is regarding the Newaughton Nature Sanctuary. And the presentation is going to be made by Lori Maitland, who is a resident. And Lori, if you'd like to come up, regarding delegations and rules. Per our bylaw, you have 10 minutes to speak, and then another 5 minutes where council may ask questions of you. So if you're ready to go, we'll start the clock. We'll start it now.
Good morning, Mayor Vogel and council members. I did prepare a presentation for today, and with your patience, I'm going to veer off of it slightly as we go, just to make sure that I incorporate in and hit some concerns that I have heard previously from council in regards to the recreation or the reinstating of the committee. So I think no one can argue that the Newaughton Nature Sanctuary is an important part of the township portfolio. It's a green space that is utilized by more than just the neighboring residents. It draws people from Cobourg and other communities. It originally was under the jurisdiction of a committee from the time that Margaret Marshall, one of the founders, stepped down in 2001 and ran that way successfully for almost 20 years. In March 2020, the original association was disbanded and the responsibility of care and protection was given to the township. But by April of 2022, there were growing concerns within the sanctuary. There were reports done. I stated one done by a Fleming College representative saying that threats to the sanctuary, if not taken into consideration and left unchecked, would pose continued threats. It pointed out things as the invasive weeds, algae bloom, shoreline erosion. It asked for a second opinion or some steps towards dealing with this. And it was never acted upon by council, and those concerns are still there today. It's hard to argue that the level of care has diminished and the park has fallen into a state of disrepair. Not only have the invasive weeds become more prevalent, but the walking path has become inaccessible by those with strollers or walking aids. I also tend to say that it's not overly accessible just for normal walking. Items of concern like fallen trees, deteriorating covered bridge structure now represent safety hazards and an increased township liability risk. Under the sole responsibility of the township, in the last 4 years, $46,000 were allocated within the budget for maintenance and revitalization. And yet only just over $3,000 was actually spent. In January of 2023, it was decided by council that the proceeds from the sale of a lot on Shawano Drive would be used for upgrading the sanctuary, and a portion of those proceeds used to hire a consultant to assess the sanctuary and provide the township with better understanding of the needs for improvement and replacement. The motion was carried 3-2. Nothing has yet to be done. On June 6th, Brian McMillan, the then manager of Public Works and Parks and Rec, put forth a council report meeting stating a need to create a strategy to ensure the location was safe for its visitors, while pointing out issues weather and increased usage had created. Nothing has yet to be done. In August of 2023, council decided to reinstate the Newawton Sanctuary Committee and put out a call to volunteers. The community stepped up, but the township put a hold on it before it could start. Nothing has yet to be done. Frustration has grown amongst residents, resulting in some taking the initiative to do the work themselves. And I know that council does not see this work done by residents as ideal. But had those individuals now stepped up, the neglect would have resulted in a much worse park condition and possible visitor injury. It was residents who removed the falling branches from the walking paths. It was residents that removed the larger patches of poison ivy. And after the eclipse in April of 2024, where over 100 people lined that beach, it was residents who did the cleanup. The township has yet to do more than the bare minimum of cutting the grass. Now, I know that council has brought up a concern of liability within having a committee. Yet council seems to not acknowledge the increasing amount of liability that sanctuary already presents. The liability of the walking path, the liability of the trees that need to be addressed, some what they call widow makers, they are going to fall, it's just a matter of time. The liability of the bridge. In fact, in 2023, the township asked for an assessment of the bridge from an engineering company. The engineering company stated, at the very least, we recommend rehabilitation to occur in the next year, or else the bridge will need to be closed for safety. That was November of 2023. It's still not done. And with the $20,000 budget that is now addressed for 2025, I'm assuming that is not high on the priority list for this year either. So there was a recommendation at the last meeting, the meeting of a whole, which stated the combining of a committee, the Nuwatan Sanctuary Committee, along with the existing Parks and Rec Committee. But that committee would then be a combination of 12 people with a very vast amount of responsibilities under their umbrella. What I'm stating is that the sanctuary needs a designated committee, a committee that is designed at looking only what the unique needs of that park require. The park is in a state of disrepair, as I said. Nobody can argue that. And it is showing signs of ecologically being unhealthy. The park itself has had, in the last 5 years, every litter of cygnets, baby swans, die before they meet maturity. That's a sign of an unhealthy ecosystem. So what is needed? I believe council needs to deal with the situation at hand. The neglect of the park has created a demand, not only specific due to the sanctuary, but vast because of the work that needs to be done. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We know what works. We only need a few simple adjustments. It was the plan, like I said, to combine the two committees, but we need a specific committee that will work in cooperation with Parks and Rec Department to come up with a long-term plan and short-term objectives that coincide with the master plan. There was talk that having a new Parks and Rec manager is a solution, but I stand to argue that if that Parks and Works manager, although intentions and I'm sure an asset to the community, is drawing from the same resource pool, the same amount of staff members, the same amount of financial resources, then you are setting him up to fail. The park has gone beyond regular maintenance, and I'm going to make an educated guess that many of the areas within his umbrella of responsibilities are also going to require more attention than general maintenance. So once again, you are spreading the resources of the township thin. You have a group of citizens willing to step up and help. And I am not saying that I agree liability is an issue, that we allow them to walk in with chainsaws and excavators, but there isn't a reason why a group of citizens can't be put together in a committee to come up with a plan, to access external resources, to see if there is funding, to see if there are grants for revitalization of a green space, to put together working groups to go in with rakes, plant some trees, do a general cleanup, help with weed control. Today on the table is a recommendation to merge the Sanctuary Committee with the already existing committee. I am asking council to turn this recommendation down. What we need is simple. What we need is a committee based and focused on the unique needs, if there's any hope of seeing change. One day, an amalgamation of the two committees may well be a move in the right direction, but we're not there yet. The needs are too vast and the responsibility is too great at this point. I am respectfully asking council to put forth a motion to reinstate the Nuwatan Sanctuary Advisory Committee effective immediately, so that there is time for those volunteer members to get together to come up with a plan that fits not only within the town's strategic plan, but the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, and to let the community once again work towards bringing this asset back to a state that will let it be enjoyed. Thank you.
I'm going to open it up for questions to the council members. Councilor Ainsley, please go ahead.
Through you, Mayor. Thanks, Lori. That was good. Good eye opener. And I will say that, you know, the ball's been dropped in that area for sure. And it has come up in different conversations with us here at council. I guess I have a few concerns about the, just for the work being down there and volunteers. And so we now have a new union for our workers, and I don't know how much of the work that's being talked about for the Nuwatan Sanctuary should be their work or is going to be their work. Do we do we train the volunteers and sign them off for weed eaters, chainsaws, snow blowers, shovels, rakes, whatever they're being used? And do we train them on, when trees should be cut, when they should not be cut, those kind of things? So to me, there's a whole lot of things that should be looked at. The other part is that, right now existing that we have different agreements that are going out for the township for businesses or different issues that are going on. And we're asking them to not do work. So these are the things that I think has to be looked at. And
Mike, I think you're debating a little bit.
well, I'm just saying, like, it's
But
great.
You've got to give 5 minutes for her to talk.
Yeah.
Lori to talk or answer any questions, and then it'll be coming up later today.
Okay. So those are kind of my questions. What do we do with the volunteers to make them sign them off, insurance purposes, for training purposes? And
Asking that to Lori.
well, no, I'm asking that for council.
Okay,
Right.
that's what we gotta, that's what I'm saying. We should wait and debate that.
Okay.
This is for the organizer. Go ahead, Chris.
Through you, your worship. Thank you, Lori, for the nice presentation. It's, I guess, 2 comments. First, it's disappointing as a counselor to see that we've budgeted over $60,000 and basically we've only spent 3. And being on the previous council, I know one of our counselors, Mike Phillip, who used to live down there, was always at staff to say at least spend the $3,000, because staff at that time would say, we just don't have the manpower. And it was like, well, then take the $3,000 and have a contractor go down there and put wood chips down or remove widow makers and things like that. So that's the first comment. And I like the idea, Lori, that you've approached us with the concerns of people, I guess, out of frustration that have gone down there now and started using chainsaws and doing things, which we know is not right. We can't have that because somebody could go down there and hurt themselves. So that's why I agree with you. I think it's important that we have a committee on its own that will discuss these things, that can get that point out to some people to say, listen, we're going to do things with the money we have, but you can't be down there doing things on your own. And that's the importance of having this committee. I agree with you. I think if you put it with the Parks and Rec Committee, what's going to happen is you're going to have an unwielding group of 14 people that I don't think anything's going to get done. But thank you for the comments. They're all well taken.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mary Catherine.
Just 2 questions, one kind of right through you to the people behind. Is everyone sitting in our audience today here because of you care about Nuwatan? Okay, thank you. That was one of them. And my second question is to you, Lori. If we were to do an ad hoc committee or a standalone committee, how do you see the ecological health? I know you raised that issue. I know that the information says that was what we were hoping to bring in an expert. How do you see those 2 pieces fitting together?
Go ahead.
Mayor Vogel. I'd actually like to combine, if I'm allowed, some comments from the previous comment as well on how the committee would work, which will also combine an answer with yours. I think that the committee as a whole's main purpose would be to come up with a plan, to come up with looking into contacting Lower Trent Conservation, having someone come in and look at water quality, look at the overall health of the sanctuary, having an arborist come in to comment on what needs to be done. There's been no reforestation at all done in the last 5 years. Trees are coming down, nothing's being replaced. So to have, I think the real purpose of this committee, yes, would be to have maybe a cleanup day or whatever, but is not to send in people with a chainsaw, is not to have the heavy work done by the committee versus township or versus a licensed professional group, but is to put something in place that holds that committee accountable and then the township accountable in maintenance and protection of that sanctuary area, of putting together a plan that can be done now within the budget that has already been addressed, and then creating a new budget to bring to council for next year that would continue the work and continue to do that until it's caught back up and functioning the way that it should. So I understand the concern of individuals going in and wielding chainsaws and doing things they shouldn't, but please understand that they're doing that because they see nothing being done. They're not doing that out of disrespect for council and how it runs. They're doing that because if they don't, they see it deteriorating before their eyes and nothing is happening. If you put a committee in place, someplace for those residents to go and say, look, we're concerned about this, we're concerned about that, the desire to do it on their own won't happen. Answers your question.
Thank you, Lori. Final questions. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Through you, Mayor Logal, to Lori, thank you again for coming today, bringing your concerns forward. I keep hearing the word sanctuary, and we have had some documentation come through that's a little bit different scope or view of the area that is there. So I'd like to see us get this right. I'd like to see dedicated people in charge here. And I look forward to getting to the bottom of this, however that looks, and getting back to the sanctuary and moving forward and getting things organized. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lori. Okay, I'll need a mover and a seconder to receive this report for information. Moved by Councillor Booth, second by Councillor O'Neill. Further discussion? All in favor? The motion's carried. We will be debating this later on in the meeting. Okay. Next, we're going to move on to number 6. Motion to approve the committee of the whole meeting minutes. That the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held on February 18, 2025 be approved. Could I get a move in a second? Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover, seconded by Councillor Ainsworth. Is there any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Motion to adopt the council meeting minutes for the special council meeting for the budget on 2025 on the 10th of February. The second one is council meeting of February 11, 2025. And the third one is the municipal planning / regular council meeting on February 25th, 2025. It is recommended the council of the Corporation of Township of Allen-Calderman enact as follows: that the minutes of the following meeting minutes be adopted. February 10th, 2025, February 11th, 2025, and February 25th, 2025. Can I get a mover and a second for those minutes? Moved by Councillor Booth, second by Councillor Ainsworth. Any questions, comments on those minutes? All in favor? Motion's carried. Is there any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none. The next one we have is the Grafton Municipal Office Building. And I believe Dave has a report on that. Well, actually, he did have a report. You're going to sit there. Okay. Hey, Dave, I thought it was pretty clear what you wanted to say, but if you have any comments, and then we'll ask council if they have any questions for you.
I'm happy to field any questions from council.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councilor Ainsworth.
Through you, Mayor. So I'm wondering if there's any avenues that we could be talking about first before we make a decision on which one of these options that we have to do. So for instance, could we have a report on how much land that we have sitting around that we could sell off? Could we sell off any any buildings or anything that aren't being used or we don't need, those kind of things. And see what we end up with money from there, depending on what we want to do with our municipal office. That would be, I don't know, maybe if we're jumping the gun, or whether we could maybe just broaden it out a little bit more. I know it needs to be fixed or be replaced. But it is a money issue, and it's not going to be a cheap fix no matter what we do. So could we get a report on what we have for property that we could sell and buildings?
Go ahead, Dave.
Through you, Mayor to Council. So respectfully, what I'm trying to do with this report is very much trying to keep the horse before the cart. And that is that we need information in order to make appropriate decisions. If you were to ask me what I feel is the best thing for us to do at this point, I'm coming back to the needs assessment. The needs assessment would look at the existing building and say whether or not it's appropriate that we should consider it as part of this project, or whether or not we should be looking at something different. If you remember, this got started because of health and safety with respect to the condition of the building. And I respect that there are a ton of opinions as to what direction that we should go. My recommendation is that we need to be extremely frugal with their finances, because we're trying to do the best we can with little. And there are so many unanswered questions. We know that a needs assessment can be funded by a development charges, so it keeps it out of the budget. Bringing a professional in to guide council and the community on which direction we should go, I believe is appropriate. And we can look at, the township does hold a significant number of properties within the township. And it can be looked at as part of this. But I think from what I'm hearing from different sides of council is that we need more information in order to make a decision. And I think through appropriate communication, the staff is not trying to pressure council to make a decision in any direction. It's that we need to do the good work so that we have the information before us so that you can make the decision. And so that's where we've rendered at in conversation with Jeremy with respect to our facilities, that the needs assessment is probably the most appropriate avenue at this point for the efficient use of finances, but also the efficient use of staff time allocated to projects.
You're Catherine, you're next.
This council has wanted to make informed decisions on this building, and we have directed you to do and provide a building condition assessment so that we know the condition of the building. And that actually is coming up immediately after is the recommendation, which is only reiterating the recommendation that was given before. Why are you wanting to do these steps then? Walk me through why we are not receiving the building condition assessment as the first step so that we know whether or not this building is in suitable condition to maintain for a short term or for a long term.
Through you, Mayor. So the recommendation that is set forth by council right now from the committee of whole is not a recommendation that staff has ever brought to council. It's a recommendation that has been borne at the council table. So your staff are suggesting that we need to go in a different direction so that we're not just spinning our wheels. So when we look at getting a condition assessment, we have a visual building assessment. And you can walk through the building and visually see a lot of the issues that are written in that visual assessment. Where we went from there was to understand what would it take to perform an intrusive and invasive structural assessment, which was the recommendation in the visual assessment. And so I brought a report to council to identify what those steps were. What council asked for was then to develop the recommendation forward here today is to develop an RFQ, which is a request for quotes So to obtain more quotes, to understand what it would take to do further structural assessments. The issue that I'm bringing to council on that is that doesn't help us get any further forward. And this all came to light because of the health and safety complaint and investigation. And where staff's concerns are, again, is the frugal use of finances, the efficiency of use of staff time, and what work are we doing and where is it going to get us? So respectfully, staff could invest time in obtaining more quotes. But I struggle with where that's going to get us in the great decisions that we need to make to move the township forward. So after staff met after the last council meeting, that's where we ended up back to is look, we need to figure things out for the future. We need to answer multiple questions. We could spend the next several months getting quotes to do a structural assessment, but that doesn't get us any further to answering the important questions that need to be answered. That's kind of where it ends up.
Follow up?
Yes, as a counselor, that is information. If I'm going to make an informed decision on the future of a building, I want a building condition assessment, and I'm quoting from Business Development Canada on why you would do that, because it helps shed light on what costs to expect immediately and in the next few years. I want to know as a counselor what costs are involved with that building. Sorry,
Thank you.
sorry. Well, then I'm happy to do that, Mayor Logal, because I think it is, as mayor, that you would want this information, not just me. So
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Councillor O'Neill. So I fully respect your intent and where you want to get to with this. So it is my understanding after meeting with Jeremy that the needs assessment will look at the structure. It will do a structure assessment, and it will advise council whether or not it makes sense to spend money on a structural assessment. Right now, we don't know if it makes sense, and we also know that we don't have the money. So that's why we're trying to look for opportunity to bring multiple answers to council. One being, is the building sound enough? Should we consider you making that rehabilitating it, or should we consider going somewhere else? Again, respectfully, we can get you more quotes on doing a structural assessment, but it doesn't drive the business of the township forward as efficiently as we think it could, and that's why we bring it forward.
Go ahead, Joan. Or Deputy Mayor, pardon me.
Thank you, Mayor Logal. Mayor Logal, I will ask my question to our CEO or CAO, sorry. I understand the needs assessment, and with listening to the conversation so far, obviously, if we do these needs assessments, which sometimes seem to be money well spent, or some people scratch their heads on whether they should be done, but that is where grants get generated from if we have done our homework appropriately and looked at the big picture. We do have quotes, or at the beginning of a quote of, if we go in and start digging and throwing walls down and all this, that, and the other thing, it could be upwards to $450,000 to already see what is there. So I totally understand where you're coming from, and that's my comments on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Logan, if I may.
Yes.
Just to respond to Deputy Mayor Stover. So we did receive a report that identified what it could cost if the building had hazardous materials in it. We had already received a report before of what it would cost to do an investigation if the building had asbestos and other hazardous materials. In conversation with the with the structural engineer, because of the age of the building, it was assumed that it had it. And we can, because the question came up at council, can we spend $5,000 to test the building to see if it has asbestos in it? We could, for sure. But does that get you further down the road? It doesn't. When one of the things that we learned, because we have a lot of staff that are new to the township, one of the things that we learned, especially with respect to the arena, when Minister Piccini reached out, that there was some significant funding available in the tune of millions of dollars, they wanted us to apply. And with respect to the arena, we could not, because we didn't have a proper needs assessment. And that was one of the major requirements for applying for grant funding. So this was definitely part of the conversation with Jeremy, and the thought process of staff to bring back this report to council for consideration is that understanding what we need to do to put the township in a better, successful place business-wise. And if we're going to spend money and effort, that we should try to set the township up for success. And that's really the conversation we had.
Thank you, Dave. Councillor Booth.
Through you, your worship, let me just get my page back here. I guess I'm a comment through you, your worship. I guess I'm confused here. If I go back on September 10th, 2024, this council approved a motion that said an RFP for a qualified company to do an engineering assessment of the Grafton Municipal Office. That hasn't been done. Pinchant, who did the visual inspection, said that you need to go to the next step, and it may involve intrusive stuff. So we're going from one company to just say, oh, we think it's going to be 400 and something thousand. So we don't know that yet. Then October 10th, council made another resolution that said no relocation of staff until an engineer's report is received and presented to council. How many times does it have to come, Mr. Mayor, to council and we vote on it? We already have twice to say that, give us the engineer's report. And I agree with the comments everybody's making. We don't know what's wrong with the building yet until somebody comes in and does that inspection. And I think Councillor O'Neill's comment is correct, is put out an RFP or an RFQ if you want, have qualified companies come and give us a price on what it's going to cost to fix this. Now we're being asked to, do we really need the building? Put an RFP for, you know, if we go somewhere else and that, and it's like, you wouldn't do that with your house. If somebody said you had a problem with your house, the first thing you'd find out is how much does it cost to fix it? Once that company comes back to us and says, it's $500,000 or $1 million or whatever it is, then we can go to these steps that we're looking at to say, where are we going to go? But until we get that report that tells us what's wrong with the building, we're jumping all over. I just don't get it. I don't understand why we're going to this right now. It sounds like staff wants to steer us off again. Twice we've asked and made a motion. And I don't understand why that can't be done. And I know the comment was made before respectfully from the CAO to talk about if you put a request for proposal or if you put an RFQ out there and you have no intent. I'm going to read the first page of every RFP that we put out. And it says the township reserves the right to not accept any proposals and to select individual items specific in the scope of work. That means when we put out an RFP or an RFQ and it comes back and it's $500,000 or $1 million, we have every right as the township to say, we're not interested, we're not going to spend it. But until we find that out, why are we jumping now to find out, oh, we're going to move or we're going to do whatever? It makes no sense to me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You have a comment, Mr. CAO?
I have several, but I'm not sure which ones I should share. Through your mayor. So simply staff is trying to research, do the right thing. to help guide this council. It's up to council where they go with it. If council's adamant about the quotes, we can do that. Again, for the record, and it's been stated before and put in the report, staff didn't move forward with the RFP because we just don't have the money. And an RFP is for a proposal to engage in commitment and or contract. I respect the wording that gets put in, but we have no money. So I would definitely like to see us get to a day where if our council members have a challenge for staff, that we don't do it in public. We no longer do it in public, that we go to closed or we engage in communication in our offices, that we can sort through some of this stuff. Because it's very disheartening to sit here and have a counselor shake their head at you, have a counselor stare you down, and have another counselor question your integrity of which your staff report to work every day. Thank you.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Just two things, Mayor Local, and not really directed to our CAO, but there were legal ramifications of putting out an RFQ just for RFP. What is the acronym? The first one. And there were legal ramifications for doing that. We've heard it 10 times. The second issue is I'm ready to vote if, but I just put it out there. I haven't given you a chance to speak, so that's what I'm at now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joan. I would like to speak for a few minutes. I don't want to spend any more money than we can or have to. I look at that building and I know that there are some concerns about it. I've seen a report from Pinchin, and I believe the person there was a structural engineer that specializes in restoration. And his recommendation is that we do an invasive look, I guess, or whatever. Take the stuff down and take a look at it. And I've also seen a report from the insurance saying you better do something or you're in trouble, or it could be you're putting yourself in trouble. And they still insure us, but I don't know how long they want to do that. And I had the opportunity to not walk around with the engineer, but after he was here with Dave, and I seen some of the things that was pointed out. I'm no structural engineer. I don't pretend to be, but you know, I think it would be the whole council to get Dave to take you for a tour of that building and see what's there and what isn't there. And you might be able to make a decision that much quicker, that much easier, pardon me. So I hate spending money, and I tend to agree with Councilor O'Neill. If we had all the information, it might make the decision easier, but I don't know how much it's going to cost us to get all that and how much time we've got to get all that too. Councilor O'Neill.
Just back to the BDC report, they say that the condition assessments begin at 2,000, and the larger the building, the price would go up from there. I do not believe this is an exorbitant cost to get the information on the condition of the building.
Where did you get that quote?
Business Development Canada is where I was looking up what building condition assessments are. I shared that as an FYI to the rest of council last week.
Through you, your worship, I guess the comment was made saying that we don't have the money, but what this is asking us to do is to hire a consultant to get an RFP, when twice we've asked for, put out an RFP for the building condition thing, and that cost us nothing other than staff time. You put it out, and like I said, if it comes back and everybody's $500,000, then come back to council and say, guess what? it's 500,000. Then we can make an informed decision on facts. But this is asking us to go ahead and spend money for an RFP. And back to your quote, I don't want to spend that money. Let's put out the RFP or RFQ to find out what other engineering companies think about the building. And when we talk about an invasive thing, it said, if you read the Pinsent report, it may require invasive stuff. It doesn't mean they have to strip the whole building. That's what they did. They gave you a worst cost scenario of $500,000 approximately to strip the whole building. There could be other engineering firms out there that say, no, it just needs to be certain spots.
But it did say it may be, safe or it may not be safe. They could have went either way. They can resolve so that they cannot be get into trouble when they say.
That's right. But the word was, it may require invasive, and we're taking Pinsent for their word to remove everything, when all I'm asking for, let's find out what other qualified engineering companies say. Then we can make that informed decision.
Through you, Mayor. So I would just ask that if we put out an RFP for the needs assessment, would it encompass all the stuff that we're talking about? So everybody would get their answer. And it would add, you know, do we have property that we can help fund this project? So I guess my question is, I hear Councillor Booth and Councillor O'Neill 100%. I'm just wondering if the needs assessment, do we know how much that would cost? And would it answer everybody's questions?
I think those are good questions. Dave, do you have an answer for that?
Through you, Mayor Logal. The same thing I said earlier, and I'll repeat. I'm hearing the same thing on all sides of the room. Hearing the same thing every time we come to discuss it. Okay. Ultimately, we have to get to a point where we make a decision, and we're just trying to do that the most efficiently.
So, to answer, or if you can, the needs assessment that you're suggesting, will that answer the structural quality of the building, current building?
My understanding, Mayor Logal, is that it will take you through the same process as the arena is going through right now. So it involves a complete look at everything, including public comment, public engagement, all of the things that are important to the residents of the township with respect to their municipal office. I will also say, though, as Councillor Booth has pointed out, if you want staff to spend time to get quotes on what it would be to do a structural assessment, we can do that. That's only one aspect of the entirety of the project. And as identified by only one company, they are correct that you have to remove the interior walls to inspect the structure. Once you do that, you encounter a significant amount of expense, and then you start to go to the extent of, it's not just about the structure, it's about the windows, it's about your HVAC, it's about the roof line, it's about the foundation, it's about the brick facade. They're a restoration project, because really in part and parcel, as soon as you do a structural assessment or one that you would consider adequate, you're into some sort of restoration anyway. And restoration projects, where do you start? Where do you end? And so what we're trying to do is bring everything together that looks at everything, so that it's a decision that moves you forward. That's all. And I mean, keep in mind, this health and safety is a big deal for those of us that have responsibility as employers.
Thank you.
I did call a vote, Mayor Logal. Thank you.
I was just going to say, we are being asked to make a decision when council has in fact made this decision at previous meetings, including the recommendation from Committee of the Whole. But with, as Councillor Booth has referenced, we did it twice before. This council has made its decision.
And like anybody else, we're allowed to make changes to our decisions. Okay, Councillor, Deputy Mayor Stover, I'm gonna read the resolution and, then we're gonna have to decide. So the resolution is read that council received report CAO 2025, draft of municipal office building future for information. And the recommendation is that council direct staff to issue an RFP for restoration project for the municipal office building in Grafton, or that council direct staff to issue an RFP for needs assessment for a municipal office building. Can I get a mover and a second? Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover, seconder?
For which option?
Oh, which I'm not sure.
I would be putting forth option number 2 for needs assessment. Mayor Logal, I would also request a recorded vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I get a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Ainsworth. Any discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Booth.
Through you, your worship, I guess to address the comment by Councillor Ainsworth over there. There's no way that a needs assessment for a municipal building is going to do the structural assessment. You're just going to get a once overview, because think about it this way, Mike, if a company is going to charge you what we're told, hundreds of thousands of dollars to do a structural assessment, if you do a needs assessment, they're not going to have a structural engineer come in there and tell you the same thing. Calling it something different and trying to save money is not going to do it. So I don't support this at all. I think we should go back to the original 2 motions that we had and we've passed already. Give us the structural report. And if it comes back, I'm more than willing to agree with everybody to say, I'm not going to spend $500,000 or $1 million. So what's our options? But this is jumping the gun. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
I'm not prepared, Mayor Logal, to put the municipality in a position where we get litigated when we go out and ask for an RFP and we're around kicking tires. I'm not in a position to do that. Thank you.
No, please. Councillor Ainsworth.
Through you, Mayor. So can that be something that can be added to the assessment? For the structural review? Can that be part of the assessment?
I would say so.
Yeah. And I think because of, if we need grants, we just went through this with a learning curve with the arena. We're doing the assessment there. If we need grants for the municipal office, we probably need to do this.
Thank you. Dave, you have a comment?
With respect to adding specifics into a project, that would be with consultation of those that would be employed to do the project. I'm sure that we can put anything together to do a whole lot of whatever it is that we like, but Mayor Logal, I have to express that I really hope for harmony amongst council and staff. If this is a situation that is creating the great divide, I'm at a loss as to what to do. Perhaps what staff could do is return from this and go and consult with Ministry of Labor and understand what it is that we should be doing. So I digress with the fact that if this council is adamant about getting quotes for a structural assessment, I guess we can.
Thank you. Mayor Galvin?
I think, to you,
Local point of order. Could you go through the chair, please?
Mayor Logal. I think that is exactly what has already happened, is council has given direction on what we would like to see happen. And that we were in fact unified. We did have a voice of council that said, we want to do this. We spoke. Now it's our role to respect the voice of council. Council did speak, it's spoken more than once and said the same message. And I think we need to respect our own voice. And that is how council works, is we discuss something, we set a direction, and then that is what we expect to see implemented.
Through you, Mayor, I do agree with Councillor Booth and Councillor O'Neill, but I also believe that it's changed because more information is coming apparent, more issues with grants and stuff. And I just think if we can just work together and go through this assessment, and if we can add a couple things to it, that would be great to satisfy everybody's concerns.
I'm kind of drawn both ways.
Yeah.
I would feel better if we had somebody give us a structural opinion of actually what it is. I really would feel that way. I hope it doesn't delay it, Dave, but if that's what council wants, then I'm willing to accept that. Because otherwise we're just gonna sit here and not be satisfied, and not have all the answers. And we'll never have all the answers, I guess, but I would like to know exactly what a structural engineer says, and if it means setting out for an RFP or an RFQ that takes 2 or 3, I don't know, will it take 6 weeks? I think it's something we should need to know before we move forward. So. Anybody else have any comments? You've asked for a recorded vote? On the second. Yep.
Mr. Mayor, we've had a request for a recorded vote on the following motion. The council receives report CAO 2025-06, Grafton Municipal Office Building Future for Information, and that council directs staff to issue an RFP for a needs assessment for a municipal office building. Starting with Deputy Mayor Stover, who requested the vote, I will go through each members of council alphabetically. When I say your name, please answer yay or nay as to how you'd like to vote, either for or against the motion. Deputy Mayor Stover?
Yes.
Councillor Ainsworth?
Yay.
Councillor Booth?
No.
Councillor O'Neill?
No.
Mayor Logo?
No.
The motion is defeated.
I would hope we have another motion before.
We have a next item.
Number 1.
1.2.
1.2.
7.2, your worship, is
7.2.
the next recommendation.
Okay. Recommendation number 1 is recommended the council of the corporation of the township of Mount Cullen enact as follows. Staff be directed to issue an RFQ for an engineering structural assessment for the town hall. And are we asking for an RFQ or an RFP?
Mayor Logo,
Yes,
if I may answer that question.
yes, please.
What you're asking for in the essence is for companies to give you a quote on what it would be to come in and do a structural assessment using the terminology from the visual structural assessment presented to council, which is invasive and intrusive. That was the recommendation. It's an RFQ.
RFQ. Then, well, it's all in as a motion. We do need a mover second. But a mover second, everybody else is Booth, second, Council O'Neill. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Deputy.
Through you, Mayor Lobo, may I request a recorded vote, please?
Anybody else have any comments first? Go ahead, Council.
Through you, Mayor, are we changing it to an RFP or is it still an RFQ?
Thank you, recommended RFQ.
It's an RFQ. The process is to obtain quotes on what it would cost. So it's hypothetical. What would it cost to do a structural assessment? And that's the only step. So then we would, what the next step is with this process is that we would create the document, the RFQ. It would be posted and shared. Companies that are interested would submit a quote as to what it would cost to do an invasive and intrusive structural assessment. We would then bring that report, or those reports back to council so that council, we could identify what it would cost to do a structural assessment. But I want it to be clear, but that's all you're getting. Just that step.
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Logal, to clarify what I believe I heard, which is that the language that will be used for the RFQ is the recommendation as worded as it is in the pension report that step 1 is to do. I don't have that report in front of me, but that's the intention, to use the language as it is in that step 1.
So council approved us to do a visual assessment and approved that it would be pension to do the visual assessment. The visual assessment was completed and presented to council. And in that recommendation was the invasive and intrusive structural assessment. They had indicated that the condition of the building, in their own words, was alarming. And so another question was born at council, and that was, well, what would it cost to do a structural assessment? And that's why I'd gone back to pension to say, what would it cost to do this? And so we had that conversation, and then that came back to council. So yes, we would use the recommendation from the visual assessment to put out the RFQ, and so that council could get those answers.
Through you, your worship, I have the pension report here, and just so council can know, when they talked about it under 7.1, it says the investigation may include exposing the entire structure concealed behind the walls and ceiling finishes and the crawl space. So it said may. So as long as we're putting that out to our RFQ, we're not telling the structural engineers that you have to take it all out. We're saying this is the report from them. If they're qualified engineering companies, some of them might not have to remove it all, or they might all say it has to be, but that has to come from them, not from us. They're the structural engineers. So I agree with Mary Catherine, as long as we're putting exactly the wording that pension has, we're not leading the structural engineers to say, give us a price on everything. I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Can that report be shared to someone else? I guess it can.
I don't follow your question.
Was pension, did they say something in the report that report is not to be shared?
It's on public.
No,
It's a public document. Okay.
no, the one that we're referring to, I do believe, is the visual structural assessment that was completed.
Yep.
And their recommendations is what we will put in. I don't believe that we'll be in a place where we will tell a company how they have to go about their assessment, but that we need a structural assessment.
Okay. Thank you. And when's a reasonable, do you have any idea we'll get that? 2 months?
I have absolutely no idea.
Okay. Thank you. It's been asked for a recorded vote.
You, Mr. Mayor, so we've been, Deputy Mayor Stover has requested a recorded vote on the following motion, that staff be directed to issue an RFQ for an engineering structural assessment for Town Hall. I will start with Deputy Mayor Stover. After that, I'll proceed through the list of council members alphabetically by name. When I say your name, please indicate yes, yay or nay as to how you'd like to vote, either for or against the motion. Deputy Mayor Stover,
No.
Councillor Ainsworth,
Yes.
Councillor Booth,
Yes.
Councillor O'Neill,
Yes.
Mayor Lobo.
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Thank you. Recommendation number 2. You have a report on this? Was your freshman report?
Oh, sorry, Mayor Lobo, I don't have the agenda in front of me, but we were on the Grafton building, and then what was the next item? What was the next item on the agenda, though?
That is.
Okay.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, this is our first ratification of the committee of the whole minutes. So these recommendations came forward from committee of the whole. So at this point, we're just looking for ratification of council, being as how you've already debated and discussed all of the topics. So this is just the second recommendation that has come out of that meeting back on February 18th.
Since we've already dealt in one meeting, should be able to move there, I hope, very quickly through this. So I'm going to read the recommendation that Van Pelt Construction be approved as a sole source provider for the Centerton Sand Dome repairs for a maximum cost of $60,000. And that the mayor and clerk be authorized to enter into a contract with Van Pelt Construction in Centerton Sand Dome repairs. Mover and second. Moved by Deputy Mayor Stolberg, seconded by Councilor Boone. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Recommendation number 3. It is recommended that the Council of the Corporation and Town of Allen act as follows: that the revised terms of reference for the Heritage Allen Advisory Committee be adopted. I get moved and second. Moved by Deputy Mayor Stolberg, seconded by Councilor Ainsworth. Discussion. All in favor? Motion is carried. Recommendation 4. It is recommended the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Allen act as follows: that the Recreation, Culture, and Community Development Advisory Committee and the Lawton Advisory Committee amalgamate under the new name of Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee effective immediately, and the draft terms of reference for the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee be approved with a maximum committee composition of 12 members at large, plus 1 non-voting representative for the Allen Calderwood Library, Public Library. I get moved to second. Moved by Councilor Ainsworth, seconded by Deputy Mayor Stolberg. Discussion. You get one chance if you have a chance, if you want to speak. Otherwise, we move on. Councilor Ainsworth, made the first comment.
Through you, Mayor. I just want for the public also in council, you know, every time we come to council, we talk about time to do things and staff's time to do things. So incorporating this committee would alleviate some time from staff for a whole nother meeting, whole nother committee, minutes, notes, and transparency and stuff. So I think this is a good idea. I know the people here don't think it is, but I think your voice is going to be heard in that committee. And through that committee, we have options in our bylaw procedures to do an ad hoc group or an advisory group out of that in certain situations. And I do think your voice is going to be heard in that meeting and work with that group. And hey, we might get some more ideas out of that group with the rest of the people. So you know, that is my concern, that as a whole, if we can combine this committee and we can work together at that, it will alleviate time and maybe open up some more avenues with just different ideas.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Booth.
Through you, your worship. Respectfully, I disagree, Councilor Ainsworth. I think a presentation was done today that explained the many reasons why it's important that the Nuwatan Sanctuary have its own committee, even if it's just for the next year and a half. And then that was discussed, if the acute problems are addressed in the next year or so, that maybe this committee could be formed with this. But I think those points were well taken, and I just think that it's going to be an unwielding committee of 12 people. And I have a feeling you're going to have people resign from there because they're going to go to these meetings and things won't be addressed. Thank you.
Councilor O'Neill.
Through you, Mayor Logal. When we set up the advisory committee that we have in place right now, that was a well-formed committee. We had excellent members of the public step forward with a variety of skills and knowledge, and they Fortunately, we were able to get representatives from the full geography of this municipality. So we had an excellent group of people come together and an advisory committee, and this is from the Municipal Council Handbook from the province. An advisory committee is made up of a mix of councillors and members of the public. These committees carry out the work of council and then report back to council with recommendations. And specifically with regard to our Parks Master Plan, but also policy development, which is an important role that we have as councillors. And I know our deputy mayor certainly raised about how do we allow volunteers to host events or to coordinate events or to help out, and what we should have in our volunteer policy. And then to pick up further in the volunteer policy, what kinds of work can we safely have them doing? So like Councillor Booth, I think that it would be exceedingly difficult to have two groups put into one that's all about policy development and giving recommendations to us as council to ensure we have really good policies in place. And then another group that has a very different mandate that's looking at the ecological health of a space. It's looking at the safety within that space. But I also picked up from this morning that they want to play a role in helping us access external resources and to make a plan for that space. So I think those mandates are different enough. And I also heard in the presentation this morning that while it might make sense at a future point, and I certainly concur myself, to have this brought in together to address the immediate needs that are in front of us, it would be better to have two committees.
Just a couple, through your man logo. This sanctuary and with listening to and reading the different information that has come past our desk in the last couple of days, have we lost sight of what this area is and what should be happening there? And it's great for the volunteer part of it, but I'm not sure if we're there yet. And I would just like to channel a question over to our Chief Administrative Officer to ask him what has been done so far, and so I could have a better idea. Thank you.
CAO.
Are you referring to what has been done so far with respect to the committee?
No, the sanctuary.
So the presentation by our resident this morning was spot on and extremely truthful.
Mm-hmm.
So currently there isn't anything. Jeremy brought forward a report during our budget process to try to seek for a foreman of parks, which is part of delivering his vision of where the township, he feels the township needs to go with respect to our parks, because we have a lot of park land. And I don't think that there's any question that it's been neglected for a significant period of time. The Nuwatan Sanctuary is not alone. However, with the fallout of our budget, I do know that Jeremy is going to circle back and try to see what else can be done. But we have not come to any answers at this point.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Follow up.
I better add a few things into it then. So again, just as a follow-up to that, Dave, do you see that this would be a situation where we'd be hiring people to go in there now as it wakes up? Because I understand at the moment it's closed. I don't know what that means. When it's closed, does that mean that no one should be going in there? I really don't understand that sign of it, only because I haven't been getting down there as much as I should have. So I'm just wondering about steps forward.
I'm not aware that the sanctuary is closed at this particular point in time. I don't believe that that our Parks and Rec staff have gone to that measure. Currently, the staff that we have work at the arena and are looking after our facilities. There's more planning and investigating that needs to get done. There's no question that, you know, our parkland drives tourism and encourages people to visit. We have our boat launches, etc. There's an entire aspect of the Parks and Rec department that does need to be looked at and reinvented for sure. And also, in case Mayor Logo, you wanted to address them, Jeremy is online this morning.
Oh, that would be.
Thank you. I don't know if we realized that or I forgot about it. Jeremy, do you have any comment? Were you able to listen to Ms. Maitland's report?
I was able to hear the presentation and report. Yes, I have no comment to build on what Dave was saying there.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Logal. It kind of ties in because I too had forgotten that Jeremy was there. And I was just wondering, had Jeremy been down to see the area?
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have been down. I've gone, I went quite a bit in the fall, and I've been down once since the change of the weather. I haven't walked through the sanctuary, but I have been down and looked at the entrance points and the first little bit, but I haven't been through in the winter.
Thank you. Mayor Catherine?
Through you, Mayor Logal. So during the budget, we did approve that there's funding there to bring in outside experts to help with this process. Any idea what kind of timelines we're looking at to have to see these people in place, I guess, is my question.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no further clarity right now on timelines for that.
Go ahead, Dave.
Through you, Mayor Logo. So council, just to be advised that because we are in union negotiations, bringing in outside labor to accomplish goals that have been established based on some of the information we've received from the union and cautionary notes that we just need to be very careful. So we are looking at it. We're definitely taking it into consideration, but we are gingerly trying to move some things forward until an agreement is put together and ratified. So thanks.
And I've been warned that we're kind of getting a little bit off subject.
Mhm.
So we appreciate that. Anybody else have any further comments? Go ahead.
Just through you, your worship, recorded vote, please.
Thank you.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we've had a request for a recorded vote by Councillor Booth on the following motion. That the Recreation, Culture and Community Development Advisory Committee and Newawton Advisory Committee amalgamate under the new name of Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee effective immediately, and that the draft terms of reference for the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee be approved with a maximum committee composition of 12 members at large plus one non-voting representative from the Alnwick-Haldeman Public Library. Starting with Councillor Booth, I will then proceed alphabetically through every member of council. When I say your name, please answer yay or nay as to how you'd like to vote either for or against the above motion. Councillor Booth?
No.
Councillor Ainsworth?
Yes.
Councillor O'Neill?
No.
Deputy Mayor Stover?
Yes.
Mayor Logo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on.
Excuse me, Mayor Logal. If I may, at this time, I'd like to put forward a motion. In light of the new terms and references for the committee, I'd like to put forth a motion to reassign council members to boards and committees. And Mayor Logal to meet with council members individually due to determine their committee preference and assign council members to committees. I can pass that on to Madam Clerk, if I may.
Everybody can, you understand that.
Mayor Logal, in light of the new terms of reference for committees, I would like to put forth a motion to reassign council members to boards and committees. And that you, Mayor Logal, will meet with council members individually to determine their committee preference and assign council members to committees. And if I may add as well, when you put us on the committees and board 2 years ago, this was a topic that we discussed that we would switch after a couple of years. So I'm just bringing it forward and that's what the motion reads. Thank you.
I've been advised by clerk that it is not separate because everybody has to be on a committee. And so therefore, we can discuss it. So are you moving that?
Yes.
Then I get seconded for that.
Thank you. Mayor Logal, I would like to also mention at this time that I have been a lady in waiting or a council member in waiting. I was to be on the Nawat Sanctuary Committee. So I just put it out there that I now, because of the amalgamation, that I do have a committee, but will be involved wherever I can to help out.
There's only 2 members on that committee.
Oh, I'm not saying where I would go. I'm just saying that this is where we're at the moment. Thank you. Oh, I'm not saying what committee I would like to be on. I'm just stating the fact. Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yeah.
can I ask for a 5-minute recess?
Oh, goodness. Back at 1 past.
I'll second that.
All in favor? So we're going to 8.1. And this is regarding committee reports. I'll read the resolution that agenda items 8.1 to 8.3 on the March 11, 2025 regular council meeting agenda be received for information. And the first one is the joint, actually, see two report. The first one is the joint Northumberland OPP Police Services Board. And there's two reports, approve the minutes of the NOPP on January 17th and the Northumberland County Board report on January 25th. There's the Lower Trent Conservation Authority with their two meetings. The first one was 2024-12-12 for the board minutes and 2024-12-12 for the Source Protection Authority minutes. And 8.4 is for the Parks and Culture Advisory Committee meeting, February 25th. That was a special meeting of that group. Can I get a mover and seconders? Moved by Councillor Ainsworth, seconded by Deputy Mayor Stover. Discussion? Go ahead.
I'm not so much a discussion, but Mayor Logal, if you can pass along my appreciation as a councillor to see so much information being shared with us from the OPP. And it certainly gives me an excellent understanding of the services that they're delivering to us. So I would like to pass that on. And then I actually have a question about 8.4. It's the agenda package that is on here for approval, but I'm not sure why we're approving an agenda for a meeting that's already passed.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's not an approval of agenda. It's supposed to be minutes, but the wrong attachment was uploaded. So I do apologize to council for that administrative clerical error there. So I can bring those forward to the next meeting. No, just for the third one. I'll bring the minutes to the next meeting so you can have them for review.
Okay, so what we were approving then was 8.2 and 8.3 only. Further discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Next is Human Resources. HR 2025-02, Human Resources Support. It is recommended that the Council of the Corporation of County of Allen enact as follows. The council received report HR 2025-02 for the Human Resources Support for Information, and that council authorized the sole source procurement of gossip HR consultant and investigations for the union contract negotiation at a value of up to $50,000 plus HST, and that a bylaw be brought forward for consideration to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into an agreement with gossip HR consulting and investigation for union contract negotiations. Move in second. Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover, seconded by Councilor Ainsworth. Any discussion?
Oh, sorry,
Go ahead.
through you, Mayor Logal. This is a situation that we have been aware of for several months regarding union contract negotiations. And this is up to $50,000. I believe that in that time frame, we should have had this go through our normal procurement policy and be in alignment with our normal procurement policy. And I can't support this, not because I have any opinion on or any concerns at all with the person that is, or that, sorry, the company that is being identified here. It is simply that I, as a councillor, believe that it's essential that we as council set the expectation that all of these contracts are going through the proper procurement policy.
All in favor?
Comment. Through you, your worship, I would agree with Councillor O'Neill. It's a large contract and I don't know anything about Doucette HR and consulting or anything. And I just believe that if we're being open and transparent, we had plenty of time to be able to put out an RFP and ask other companies. And then if senior staff wanted to have this one, they could have given us reasonable things. I just don't think to say that it was an emergency. When this all first happened, it sounded like we had Hicks and Morley come in. I could understand that being okay, short term, but we've had months and months that we could have put out an RFP for this. So I would agree with the same sentiments that Councillor O'Neill's saying.
Thank you. Any further comments? All in favor? Motion's carried. Communications, motion to receive communications. And the first one is 15.2 and 15.3 are included in this motion. First one's from the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, 2025 provincial election priorities. And second one is from Northumberland County redistribution of the provincial LPT and GST to municipalities. Supporting, and it's from Northumberland County resolution supporting redistribution of the provincial LTTs, which is provincial land transfer tax. Everybody's information. So can I get a mover in a second for those? Moved by Deputy Mayor Stolberg, seconded by Councilor Rainsworth. Discussion? All in favor? Motion's carried. Bylaws. Bylaw 22025 to execute an agreement with Doucette HR Consulting and Investigations. BL 2025 to execute amount agreement, with Doucette HR Consulting and Investigations. It is recommended that the Council Corporation of Township of Alnwick enact as follows: that bylaw 22025 being the bylaw to execute an agreement with Doucette HR Consulting and Investigations be given a first, second, and third reading and finally pass this 11th day of March 2025. I can move in a second. Moved by Deputy Mayor Stolberg. Second by Councilor Ainsworth. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Bylaw to execute an agreement with Van Pellet Construction. BL 21035 to execute an agreement with Van Pellet Construction for center and sand dome repairs. And is recommended that the bylaw number 22025 being a bylaw to execute an agreement with Van Pellet Construction be given a first, second, and third reading and finally pass this 11th day of March 2025. Can I get a move in a second? Moved by Councilor Booth, seconded by Councilor Ainsworth. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion's carried. There are notices, no announcements of notice of motion. Confirming bylaw 22025, confirming bylaw regular council meeting of 2025-0311. That bylaw 22-2025 being a bylaw to adopt the proceedings of the regular council meeting held on the 11th day of March 2025 and to authorize its execution be given a first, second, and third reading and finally pass this 11th day of March 2025. Move in a second. Moved by Councilor Booth, seconded by Councilor Ainsworth. Discussion. All in favor? Motion is carried. Motion to adjourn the regular council meeting held on March 11, 2025. It be adjourned at 11:30 a.m. Moving to seconder. Moved by Councilor Booth, seconded by Councilor O'Neill. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.